Start recording. Okay, it is 12:02 on Friday, July 22nd, and I will call this City of Lacey Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting to order. And just wanted to acknowledge all of our members present. We have Ruth Weigalt, Chad Carpenter, Susanna Mattis, myself, Malcolm Miller, and City Manager Scott Spence. First order of business. And then secondly, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our June 17th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. And it looks like first up on the agenda, we have our Lodging Tax Fund financial report being presented by City Manager Scott Spence.
Thank you, LTAC. If I say LTAC committee, it's like saying ATM machine, right? I'm being redundant. I know. Sorry about that.
We are in the cash machine.
That's right. So within your packet is the latest year-to-date finances for LTAC revenue as well as expenditures. You may recall we had about 184,000 year-to-date revenue. That is now at almost 230,000. As reported last time, we still believe we're going to meet revenue projections as budgeted. So we're still on track. So we have essentially about half the revenue that we budgeted year to date. So want to point that out. On the expenditure side, we have obviously been receiving expenditures or reimbursements to the events that you have approved. And we're about 100 and I'll say 46,000 new expenditures being actually $246,000 of expenditures being reimbursed so far the year. So just kind of a recap, we have about 229,000 and change for revenue for year to date. And we have reimbursed up to 346,000 and change for expenditures.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So tomorrow, the South Sound block party,
Yes,
is that the one that was gonna be in Olympia that we said that we would give them money if they were in Lacey?
correct.
So that could be
That may not occur.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you may recall
Right.
there was a condition that the event had to be held in
Right.
the jurisdiction and
Yeah.
There's been some correspondence, but I've not heard any update on that.
I saw their flyers. They are moving full steam ahead.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
they
still
are.
based at Port of Olympia.
It is still
Yeah.
based at Port of Olympia.
Okay. So.
It's unfortunate. Maybe next year we can have them do something here.
Or
Any,
at least a portion of it.
any questions on the numbers from the people virtually?
Okay. With that, then, I guess we'll move on to our next agenda item, local jurisdictions, LTAC funding. Again, our city manager, Scott Spence, is presenting.
Okay, this is gonna be fun. So I do not have a computer in front of me. Nicole in the background hopefully is going to display. Everyone should be able to see the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, July 22nd PowerPoint, okay? So far, so good. So if you recall, last time that we met, this is late last year, there was some questions about, well, how do other jurisdictions spend their LTAC dollars? And so what we did is just compile the 4 jurisdictions and to give you a quick summary of the events that they basically support. So Nicole, next slide, if you could. So again, mission statement for Lacey is to invest tax revenues in the community to the greatest extent that we can track the greatest number of visitors related to tourism dollars in Lacey. So next slide is the city of Tumwater. So city of Tumwater last year funded 180,600 in projects. You may see some familiar events because there is some crossover, but they also, I'll just jump around, but Olympia Flag Museum, we've done that one before, obviously. They also do the Washington Center for Performing Arts. It is. Yeah, it has the same information slideshow. They also support the Capitol Lake Fair. And so does this committee, or at least they did last year. VCB is also supported, but that just gives you an idea of the number of activities that they support. So they obviously have less lodging tax dollars than the city of Lacey does, but obviously less than half. So any questions on that? It's just to really to give you familiar with what they're spending their tax dollars on.
Okay.
And then we'll go to the city of Olympia.
No, they give to the, oh, no, they don't. Okay.
So kind of just going from, bottom to top, they give about $100,000 to VCB. Hands-on Children Museum receives almost $74,000. They have Olympia Downtown Association that they provide to almost $60,000. Harlequin Productions, Capital Lake Fair, obviously, $25,000. Olympic Flight Museum, Senior Games, that's also something that we also support. And then a couple other, say nonprofits like Gateway Rotary and Lake Run Organization.
Looks like they also have Olympia Beyond Sports Commission, which is,
Is it separate? Ours used to be separate.
it is separate. There's the VCB and then there's the Sports Commission.
So it'd be, if you took those two, that'd be 115,000.
Got it.
So just maybe a reminder, I think everyone knows this, the city of Olympia has obviously a special relationship with the Washington Performing Arts Center, and they give 2% of their lodging tax dollars, because we all collect 4% off lodging rooms, and half of that goes in support of that facility.
Right.
But it's not demonstrated here. So then Thurston County, they have
They give 64,000 to Harbor Days. Ooh.
Yeah. So $75,000 is what Thurston County collects. And Thurston County Fair is the biggest recipient at 30,000. They've also given Lacey South Sound Chamber of Commerce 10,000. And South Sound Barbecue is another activity that they also support. And the Bakota Spooktacular Festival is another event that they support. So $75,000. Then the next slide is, you should be familiar with, that's the city of Lacey. So that's what we funded in 2022. And then the next slide is really just a summary of the lodging tax dollars that comes into Thurston County. We didn't highlight Yelm in the individual light, but that being said, I think we only have one hotel, but there's 1.4 million that is being allocated in terms of lodging tax funds to the communities. Olympia and Lacey are roughly the same in terms of just actual dollars going into, minus the Washington Center. And then you see Tumwater is about 13% of that total, and then Thurston County is 5%.
Thank you for that breakdown, Scott.
Yeah, and as you know, that changes every year, but it kind of gives a big picture of kind of what amount of funding is going into the communities for their various activities. And you do see some overlap.
A little bit. And we knew that going in because they tell us sometimes when they come and they say, we just came from.
Yep, absolutely. So that's something we can do on more regular basis. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. A lot
It's
of
good.
information to digest.
And it's good to know where we stand in relationship to
Mhm.
our other jurisdiction partners.
Yeah, we don't always know in real time, again, for the 2023 cycle, because we don't know what the jurisdictions are going to fund. I mean, that maybe is always a question that comes up, but we definitely could do it as a after action, looking backwards, say what did they do in a given year. If that makes sense.
It does.
Mhm.
Very similar to what we do at the finance committee. Okay, well, does anybody have any other questions about what you've seen in this presentation?
No, I appreciate it. Just like everybody else said, I really appreciate seeing where we land in comparison to the other jurisdictions. So I appreciate having that data. Thank you.
Super straightforward. You know what I mean? You could have put some pop-ups in there. It's very colorful. It's nice.
Is that the new standard? I need a pop-up?
You know,
Dang, it's like next level.
yeah, we'll get there. We're conserving dollars right now, and that's how that goes. So let's move on to the next agenda item, because in there may be a couple more questions. And this is going to be the Ltch schedule.
Yes.
So Scott, let us, please tell us about the Ltch schedule.
So this is probably the key points that we need to discuss with the committee today. So one is, obviously on our next item, we're going to look at the actual application, but we do need to have a discussion about when we want to make these available to the public. So if you look on the screen, we've kind of done a proposed schedule based on the feedback that we talked last time. So we could make applications available to potential folks that want to apply for funds August 1st. And that essentially would give them a whole month. That gives about a 5-day turnaround, put the packets together for your next meeting. But we think we can do that. So that means you'd have your initial review on the 9th of September. Again, it's your process. If you want to decide if sometimes in the past you've decided to fund an event that you're familiar with and it's maybe the same level of funding. And if you're comfortable with that, then that's sometimes you, in a sense, said, let's agree to do that. Not officially, but then put that aside and then only ask for presentations on either brand new events or something that's significantly changed, or if you just have a general question about that. You can do any format you want. It's just a matter if you want more information when you get the applications, if you need more information. So that's just a proposal. Again, that could change, but you could do your initial review on the 9th, and then you could have 3 potential follow-up days on the 16th, 23rd, and 30th. The key date for us really is when we're trying to compile the budget. We just need that really technically by the end of September, but October 3rd would be that first Monday. So we can incorporate that in the budget. And then that budget would then be presented to the city council. We'd go through our public hearing process. The last date that council will decide on the budget is December 15th, assuming that is approved without modifications of LTAC recommendations, then we would soon thereafter be giving notifications to applicants that they are awarded LTAC funds.
Okay, so the last time we visited this, we talked about outreach. And I was hoping to revisit that in that, we have seen some community events that have been held here for decades who didn't know that they could have access to any of these types of dollars. So what are our outreach channels that we, let people know what they have access to so that they can put on an event in the city?
I think maybe I'll lean on some of the folks that do events. I think people who provide events have general understanding that there are LTAC funding available. We talked last time that we will use our communication channels. We also do rely, or we can rely on VCB to also push out information to say, look, there are lodging tax funds available for people that want to apply for events or community, events, and that, they could link up with our information on our website and they could apply for funds just like everyone else, as well as they can apply for other funds in other jurisdictions, just like we talked about last time.
Yeah, because we've seen some anomalies show up, like people who we've never seen or met before. And, they somehow found out. I didn't know. And I guess that would probably be something that we could include. How did you find out about LTAC funding or something along those lines? So we know where. I guess it's cool to have metrics, but at the same time, I feel bad for those guys who have been doing events in the city for decades and didn't, ever reach out to us.
But I think we talked about the most common route is, and I'll use Polyfest as an example.
Yeah.
So they start a brand new event, never happened before. And then they went to the city and say, hey, we'd like to have some support. And what we said is this is a great event. This is a great opportunity to apply for lodging tax funds. They waited the next year and at that time, the committee funded those.
Yeah. And also we could probably look at what's happening in our parks.
Sure.
Because they schedule, and I think you're probably talking about June 14th or Juneteenth.
Yeah. That was one of them.
Yeah. And I think we could look at our park schedule and see what's going on in our parks.
Maybe that would be a good option to, I don't know if we probably don't have any LTAC touch cards or anything like that, but if we could loop in parks and say, hey, when people are having events, let them know. Maybe who knows, they may be interested, they may not. And I know that would probably flood our channel with applicants and create more work for all of us. But who knows what kind of cool events we could get out of that kind of endeavor.
Well, so I was going to ask the committee this, and I think this is a relevant question. You could set aside a portion of current revenue that would be used just for new events. I mean, just as a, if the idea of the committee, again, this is only a suggestion, if you wanted to promote new events in the community and do something different, that could be a policy discussion that you could have, that you'd reserve a certain amount to say, this would be set aside for a brand new event that you're trying to cultivate. At one point, this committee has always had a discussion about, at some point, is funding forever? Is it seed money? I mean, we've had these debates, it seems like, for the last 10 years, and it's a relevant question. Is it, are you always going to see ongoing funding, or are you trying to create a new event? Or if it's an established event, you want to continue to invest in it too.
Okay, so if we were to say, follow that logic and say, maybe we will have a discussion about, setting aside dollars for brand new people who want, where in this timeline would we fit that in the agenda? Would we want to put that in the budget submittal on that agenda, or we want to wait until the end of the year, the final meeting agenda?
I think what you do is, because it seems like every year we get some kind of new event that would just to some degree give them a different, maybe an easier path to come through. You're not competing with everyone else that's been established. That would be the.
Right. And so in an effort to not upset, this timeline and what we have in place and what's going to happen in our typical funding cycle, I'm just trying to think of, where can we have that discussion and potentially implement something for the next cycle?
I think you do it now if you want to.
When we review the applicants and see what we've got, see what money is left, if there's any left, or who we're not going to fund, or who we're going to reduce our funds to.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we could see.
So going into this process for 2023, you could say, just for example, 10% of the funds of current revenue you want to set aside for new events. Let's just say that's the case.
And then
then that's your policy. And then as you do your initial review, you'll use that as a template or a guideline when you're making your decisions for applications.
What do you guys think about that idea? Chad, Susanna?
I think it's a great idea. I am just very weary about setting aside a certain amount or a percentage of our total, just because what happens in the event that we don't get any new people or new events, where does that allocation go? Does that become something that goes into our reserves, or I think it's a great idea. I just don't know exactly how we're going to formulate that, especially when we don't know that there's a new event on the horizon.
Could we do something like at the end of the review process, if we didn't see brand new events, it would just go back?
Yeah.
The funds would just revert back to the general fund?
Yeah, I think we use, again, let's say that 10%, let's say it's first position, right? Any new event would have first shot at funds. If there were no new events, then it would then go back into any established event. So it just, in a sense, I would say first dibs, but essentially they would have first right or access those funds. If there were no new applicants, then you just collapse it into the regular application process.
Gotcha.
But again, it's just a policy discussion.
Yeah.
If we were to say put 10%, though, that's 50,000, right?
Yeah.
Or so.
Roughly.
That's a lot of money for I don't think we're going to get more than probably one new event.
And we may not even end up funding their entire thing, but at least they would get a shot at.
But that's a lot of money to put, if we just.
set
use it
aside.
for- Yeah, that's my thought.
No, and again,
Okay.
this,
I know.
you're the policymakers. I'm just saying, you could say this is a set aside.
Say 20,000.
Well, right, but not a single event maybe needs 50,000. You can
Yeah.
do multiple new events and say they get 5,000 or 10,000 or 15. It's just whatever you decide. That's
Okay.
just an example.
It would just.
feel
be
like-
not to-
I was
Go
gonna
ahead,
say, I was gonna say, I feel like we've been really good about going through the list, like when we've had, 30, 35 different groups in there. We've done really great in the past as far as saying, hey, this is a newer event. Let's fund them at this level and see, how their event goes. I know that like Polyfest, since we had already used them as an example, I went to that event, and it was fantastic what they did. And so it's like, okay, cool. I can keep that in mind, looking around and looking at what the draw was for the community and looking at kind of their numbers. it was one of those things that's like, okay, it's noted for next time or for the event outside of there. So I think I like where we're going with this idea. I just want to see us do. I guess I just don't know what the right answer is. So it's something to chew on. So I'll
Okay,
kick
so-
it back to you guys.
Before I say what I want to say, Susanna, did you have any thoughts?
I agree with Chad. I like the idea. I mean, I'd like to see, I could go either way, I guess.
Okay,
On
okay,
this
so
one.
what I'm thinking I really want to do is take a look at the applications that come in this year.
Yeah.
Let's separate what we have never seen before from what we have seen in the past. And in that separation, if there is cause enough for us to set aside dollars because we're receiving new applicants, new applications that we've not seen before, then we can revisit this discussion and make that policy at that time. Because I do want to see new people. If we see them this year, then we have good enough reason to act on such a policy.
So there's another thing to consider, because some people who've been here for a long time, sometimes we've seen them ask for a lot more. I mean, to me, $10,000 asking for an additional $10,000 is a lot of money. So we got to kind of balance all that.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? But I think we should wait this year and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no rules that says we have to fund at additional levels. Like Scott was saying, is this seed money or is this some, perpetual, forever money in their opinion? Are they doing things to grow and get other sources of funding, or are they producing any kind of a revenue from their sales where they can use us less and less and less and become more independent and financially more solvent? But I'd like to see in our application process this year, do we have enough new applicants to make such a rule? Yeah, and here's the thing, we could make the rule now and then collapse the funds into back into LTAC. Let's see if we need to do that too at that time, because that might be an option as well. So
And we don't know what people are gonna ask, if they're gonna ask for additional. I'm thinking only because, like with Fun Fair, our costs went sky high. And we don't know if other people are experiencing that. I mean, to provide our contract with Clowns Unlimited or, because their costs went way up.
yeah, and
So we don't know what we're gonna see from people.
it's interesting because we're dealing with that across the board in so many different sectors and levels, that because supply chains were interrupted,
Yeah.
prices went up to get the goods that you needed to make your widget. And then when supply chains got made whole again, did you lower your price back down?
Yeah.
Because your cost went down, and I am not seeing the prices going back down after the supply chain was made whole again. And who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Nobody, until
Yeah, and-
somebody else does it first.
And I don't think anybody, Malcolm, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody's going to do that. I think they're going to be like, hey, you were willing to pay for it at that price, and that sets the new price, that new price point. So
Until one business says, I'm going to sell gas 10 cents cheaper than the guy across the street. And then somebody else says, you know what, I can beat that by 3 cents, and so on and so on. So the market's going to have to balance this out. And so maybe we are going to have people who their event is going to cost more this year. And hopefully we see those numbers start to go down a little bit. But I think, the Fed's coming out next week. You guys know Jerome Powell is pretty aggressive dude, and he's
Predicting 100 points.
You think that's on the table?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can totally see 1%.
I was hoping for a quarter or a half,
Yeah.
but I know that his goal is to tame the inflation. But the fact of the matter is that we are already up, 1.5 points from the beginning of the year.
Right.
And so I would like to see us let that ride out and see, because I see the bond market is bouncing back, which is nice to see. But if we take this overly aggressive stance and posture, then what happens on the other side of that? There's always going to be some blowback.
Yeah, I think everything I've read, they're trying to induce a recession
Mhm.
to stem the word about stagflation that we had in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which I think what their lesson learned there, if it's a lesson that, you know, they didn't act fast enough. And so they'd run away inflation,
Yeah.
combined with unemployment and then an anemic economy.
Well, we don't have the unemployment issue, but yeah.
True.
So I guess for this committee, all I'm really saying is that it's interesting that Scott said, you know, they didn't act fast enough, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking, if I don't act on this now, you know, then what? You know, but I honestly, you guys, we could make some policy right now, but I'd really like to see how many new applicants we get this year before we jump into a policy that sets aside dollars for said new applicants and then collapses those dollars back into the fund just for the sake of making a policy.
So maybe as a way to help the committee, is the proposed schedule, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you can obviously deviate. I mean, really the bigger thing is making the applications available the 1st of August. And then that's really a full month for people to, I guess, enough time to promote the applications available and enough time for people to fill them out. First meet would be September 9th. You could then talk about all the things that you want to do, how you want to make your decision-making process. We still have time to figure that out. The only other fixed date is really that October 3rd. That gives you a month to make your decisions.
Okay, so then at that,
That's your timeline, yeah.
Correct.
so then at that September 9th meeting, let's revisit this question to see if we
See what
have
comes
grounds
in.
to stand on
Yep.
to make any kind of a policy. So if we can add that to the agenda, I'm not sure who's listening that can add stuff to the agenda. Is it Nicole? Nicole, can we please add that to the September 9th agenda?
We sure can.
Thank you.
And that's probably a good segue if you want to start going through the application.
Please.
So one thing that we could do if there is a desire to at least maybe entice or encourage new events, we could just have a cover letter on front of the application that, you know, the Lacey, you know, lodging tax encourages new events for the betterment of the community or something that doesn't, it's not a guarantee, but it's just a affirmative statement that we're looking for new and exciting things in the community.
Is it possible to create like a touch card and send it out to the nonprofits in the area? Is that something that
I think we'd probably do an email blast if we had.
maybe a digital touch card could be created and say, hey, you know, we'd love to see your event happen in our city. Maybe you can.
I think we'd be more, I think we'd just state the fact that the lodging tax process for Lacey is now open. Here's the application. If you want information, here's the link, et cetera, et cetera.
But does that have meaning outside of the context?
If somebody's looking for money, it will.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, do you think they'll understand that?
I mean, we could definitely put a paragraph that says that the lodging tax funds, we could restate our mission. that,
There you go.
We're using the tax revenue to attract community events and projects.
Okay.
Which brings me to this application. Can I say
Please.
something?
Take the floor.
How will your programs, services promote and enhance tourism in Lacey? So some of the events that we sponsor are not in Lacey. And I question, so how can we reword that or make it stronger or? I don't know, because, okay, let me just go down.
Okay,
the
wait,
road.
first, let's all be on the same item that you're on. Show us where you saw that.
Number
Question
two.
2.
Number 2. How your program services promote and enhance tourism in Lacey? Is it the word tourism? Or is it, are you thinking something more along the lines of bring attention to the community of Lacey or bring people to the community of Lacey?
How will they promote? Okay, so I'm just gonna pick on one event, okay? And I don't mean to be picking on them, but I'm gonna highlight one event. Lake Fair.
Okay.
It was for a banner. I think we gave them $10,000 and it was thing was that they were gonna be going around to different festivals and communities, and on their banner was gonna have Lacey on it. Well, yeah, it does, but is that worth $10,000? That's what I'm saying is, how is that gonna bring people back to Lacey?
That's some pretty spending marketing to
Yeah,
have your
Yeah.
5
so I'm
letters
just
on a banner.
saying, I have that as an example.
Okay.
So how can we? I don't know. I just.
So
think
how will your
it's-
program?
Yeah.
How will your program services promote and enhance tourism in Lacey?
And how can we make sure that they answer that to our satisfaction, that we're getting the bang for our buck, basically.
So better data points.
Mhm.
Okay, so. All right, so then this might be another situation where we need to look at the applications that come in, see how that question was answered.
Yeah.
And if these words produce the right intent,
Mhm.
so maybe we can.
It was something that all of a sudden but I don't know how to reword it any differently. But I think we need to definitely.
Well, Scott has an extensive vocabulary. It's absolutely amazing. I think he went to, did you go to?
Willamette.
But anyway,
That's where the
it's just
governor went.
something because, anyway.
So let me just so that we're 100% clear, I want to make sure that I'm, okay, so how will your program services promote and enhance tourism in Lacey? You're looking for very specifics on or about how is what they're doing going to bring
promoting our
people
city,
to this city?
and then enhance tourism.
How is what you're doing going to bring people to Lacey?
So I think that would be a good sub bullet point. So we have the 2 other bullet points. So I think the how is, please show us how that will bring, tourism back to Lacey. That would be a good sub bullet point. And I would even recommend that we change the verbiage to something like, how will your event, activity, or program promote and enhance the tourism in the city of Lacey? I would say not just put Lacey. I mean, I leave that open for discussion, but I think we should be a little bit more broad on instead of just program services, to add event, activity, or program. Because if you look at all the people that have applied, we have events, we have activities, and we have programs. So there's 3 different kind of
So
areas
Chad,
to touch upon.
go ahead and say that one more time. How will your event, activity, or program
Promote and enhance tourism for the city of Lacey?
Mhm.
And then a sub bullet point, which we already have the 2 bullet points there. The third one would be, please describe how your event will then bring tourism back to the Lacey area or the Lacey community, which would encompass kind of what, that Lake Fair banner, not that we're picking on a specific organization, but how would that tell us how that's going to tie people coming back? They see a name on oh, Lacey, okay, but how does that bring people back into our neighborhood?
Scott, just so I'm clear, are we reviewing this because we have time for amendments? Or are we,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, whatever changes you make today, we will incorporate, and that will be part of the August 1 application.
got it. Okay,
So to, I guess Chad's point, I mean, again, going back to the reason for lodging tax dollars, you're trying to demonstrate economic activity
Yeah.
created by tourism. And so, and again, that's why the question 1 is done. That's very specific. That's something they have to do by state law.
Right.
But you're right, we could try to get more specifics. And I think maybe in the past, this section has not been, I mean, it's just more of a general statement. It doesn't get into specifics. And maybe we need to design a question in a way where we get more exact answers and not just sort of a broad general statement.
right.
Specifically tell us how many people do you think are going to show up to Lacey, and spend dollars on lodging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Without scaring them away.
Yeah, and again, not to highlight, say, the Washington Center, I mean, they're very specific. They know how many, say, residents,
Yeah.
from the Lacey community go to the Washington Center, and there's that nexus there, so.
Yeah, when they present their metrics, it's very clear.
And we can tell you how many people we put in hotels in Lacey. I mean, we have all that data, so.
And it's kind of hard for events to do that though, like, I mean,
Mhm.
yeah.
Especially for a new event where they have zero metrics to show or provide. Maybe they have some examples of something they did in another city, but how could that be relevant to us? Really.
If you charge an admission to get into something, you can figure that out usually, or people, I think at the Mushroom Festival, they used to have them sign in or do something because they bought a ticket or put there. But if it's free, how are you gonna do that?
I've
Right.
done a couple events at the Thurston County Fair, and we've had to do a vendor application, and it does tell us, do you plan on, there were metrics in there. Do you plan on renting rooms in a local hotel? So, I mean, there is information out there. I don't know, every event is going to be different, but if you're hosting, like, I don't know, Lacey Fun Fair, if you guys have a vendor application
Yeah,
that
we
gets
have
put out,
vendors, but
that-
that's not the general public.
right, that's not general public, but at least they have some kind of data that they're collecting on if there's
Oh, yeah.
out
Yeah.
of site vendors,
Right.
they can say, well, we're bringing vendors in, so out of state. But, sometimes there's a zip code, sometimes people also collect zip codes. They do random, hey, can you tell us what your zip code is? And so they capture those data points.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that. I mean, yeah, I would definitely wish we could do that.
Okay, so as far as number 2 is concerned, are we comfortable with the way Chad has presented that? How will your event, activity, or program promote and enhance tourism for the city of Lacey? Okay. Scott, is that something that can be incorporated, or how do you?
I'm so sorry to think of how we can help the committee get a sense of that. I mean, there's almost part of me that says, and let me maybe pull an event from the past. So the Jazz Festival. Jazz Festival was a really impactful event.
Oh, yeah.
And let's say, at some point we're giving them, was it close to 40?
35,
Okay.
40.
Okay, let's say $40,000. To some degree, you could answer our questions that, well, this event, they could include their total budget for the event. I mean, you can say if you're bringing in, it's a $100,000 event, that is a true economic impact that you're bringing in community. And I understand expenses are going outside the community, but you're bringing that to your community. Then if you can demonstrate that they're using the hotels, we should probably list the 8 hotels that we have in the city. And they should check the box like, yes, we're using that for
Hey,
the host hotel.
Wow.
And they could then say how many rooms that they've booked or they anticipate. That somewhat blurs a little bit of one, but that should be specific to that. Then they should say, well, generally describe what businesses that you see being benefited from your activity. And then they should be more specific, list the restaurants or retail spending, that type of thing they anticipate this event will bring. So it forces them to not just do a general blanket statement like, hey, we're holding an event and we're going to have kids and we're going to have, food. It would actually be more specific that we think that any food restaurant in Lacey will be impacted for the next, 2 days or 1 day event, something to that effect.
okay, and so my question is, if we drill down that far, do we make ourselves unattractive?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about Fun Fair. Now, this is something that I went in to get some coupons from McDonald's to hand out for something. I can't remember what. And this has been a few years ago. That McDonald's on Pacific Avenue by
But what Blockbuster was, Carpenter
Yeah,
Road,
yeah.
Stephen Carpenter.
So the lady told me, oh, I'm so glad you reminded me. She's, I'm gonna have to add more staff. Now, who would have thought? We have food.
Oh, sure.
We have food at Fun Fair, but they have to bring in additional staff because they're so busy Fun Fair weekend.
Mhm.
Is that crazy?
Well,
I mean, it's good, crazy,
Overflow.
but that's a good thing, but
But Chad mentioned this, like, when I was at Polyfest, I went to a vendor and they had to stop because they ran out of ice or whatever. So they said, hey, wait, we're running down to wherever Safeway, you know, give us 10 minutes, we'll be back. So there is that sort of impact too.
Sure.
I know it's, but maybe that's some part of the narrative that can actually see, you figure out what the footprint impact is gonna be.
Yeah.
But again, I think like the second page or third page is really, that's fairly straightforward. That gives you good
Yeah,
information. But if you're trying to find a broader impact to the economic activity this event's gonna have, we do need to have a little more specificity or detail to help
Yeah.
the committee
And that'll
understand what that is.
And we can pile up those metrics and be able to make better decisions.
Right?
Mhm.
Maybe
But
we need to,
sometimes you don't even think about it. You're so busy planning this event. And like I say, I never once thought about, well, why would people go to McDonald's if we got food at Fun Fair? But
Yeah,
she
the
just.
vendor at
that
Fun
was the
Fair
owner.
ran out of
That
food.
was the
I had to
owner.
walk back
Yeah.
down past McDonald's to get back to wherever I parked or I'm going home to.
Yeah, yeah, no, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing when there's those kind of impacts that we don't think about
Yeah.
when we're planning.
That spill over right
Festival.
onto the local businesses.
Exactly.
We've got a report. We were also figuring something like that out. We actually have a report that goes out to all the restaurants in not only downtown, but Lacey and Tumwater. They get it every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. because we know, like Ricardo's, for example, obviously it's in Lacey, but we have Lacey folks that come and go downtown, you know, for the event. So what they do is they go to Ricardo's. Well, when I was talking to Ricky and Marie, it was
Wait a minute, stop right
year
there.
ago.
Chad. Ricky Ricardo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When they owned it, when we were talking, they were like, we get hit all the time with people coming down to the center for food. So we added them to our event as well. So they could get a weekly report as to what the numbers were for shows that are coming in, just because they needed to up staff, and we heard that from all over. So we just decided to throw a report together that's automated that sends it out to these businesses, so then they could make sure that they had proper staffing. So yeah, because it really does affect a lot of people in a lot of different areas.
Mhm.
So then are you guys in favor of what Scott has proposed, which is adding the restaurant, or sorry, the hotels that we have listed and the other items to question number, was it 2?
yeah, I think 3 is okay. I think we just, and what we could do is maybe
4.
insert an example.
Yep.
That will help, because you're right, we want to make this easy. We're not trying to, you know, do a PhD dissertation, right?
And Croup, I would like us to see if we could change the word you in all of these to your event, activity, or program. So it's specific. It's not you as the individual that's filling out the form, but keep it global to the event, activity, or program. So there's a number, like question 3 has that. Question 6 has that, question 7 and question 9 for sure. If we could just take the use out and put in your event, activity, or program.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I spent a little bit of time on this before we got here.
Good. Thank you, Chad.
And then number 4, this one's always been very vague to me. If there's a host program for your event, but we never call out which one. Like, it'd be nice. I mean, I'm sure Suzanne would love to know, hey,
Where you stand.
yes, there is a host hotel, and it's like, what is that hotel? Or so if we can maybe ask for a little bit more information.
Mhm.
So on that one, Chad, I think we will list the 8 Lacey hotels, and then we'll put other, and we'll just put a checkbox. So again, if it's,
Love it.
yeah, Candlewood,
Mhm.
We have 8.
check the box.
Holy cow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
And then we'll put maybe a number of rooms you anticipate, either vendors or visitors, or have you reserved rooms? So that could just be a question.
Okay.
So number 8, the top resources of your income. A lot of times when we're a top resource for an event, they don't list our lodging tax. We've had that issue in the
Yeah, they're
past.
confused by that, right?
Yeah,
So
so.
include us.
Yep,
Lacey
include LTAC requests.
Yeah.
And clarification, Ruth, do you want was it specific to our LTAC or is it other LTACs too? Because we both have seen other LTACs that
Yeah.
they've applied for, but they've left out.
Right.
Well, if it's in the top, if
we're
it's in the top 5, you may
Right.
not be in the top 5.
It's
But
True.
if it is, they should be included, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, the more checkbox, make it easier for you when you review it and easier for the person filling out the application. Okay.
Last year we had an application that she put her home address on there and then later didn't like having her home address on public record. And I didn't bring this to you guys, but I did,
Disclaimer.
yeah, I did talk with the city attorney to see if we could have her home address redacted from the record, and so I don't know if that's the first time that's ever come up, but
It is, but we should remind people that this is a public record and that whatever information you put on here is available. And
yes,
so
Okay.
if you're using personal information, encourage you to use your nonprofit status or whatever. There's, again, it's a fair warning type.
yeah, we'll put a little disclaimer or something on there so
Yeah.
people understand.
Oh, this is good conversation.
This is great conversation. What, never mind. I was gonna say it's pretty selfish. I was just looking at the organizational agency contact information. But I'm just wondering if we need to say organizational mailing address instead of just mailing address, if that's where the confusion lied, but I will leave that up to the experts that the city hires to take care of that.
So as long as they know that, hey, whatever address you put on here, these are public dollars, this is public information.
We will still have the COVID-19 disclaimer. Again, I'm not trying to forecast. We still are in an elevated climate. I don't expect anything to happen, but you just never know.
Okay, so does anybody see anything else on the application that they would like to possibly submit for change prior to submission so that when we push these out, our changes are made? It looks like, Scott, will we have a chance to review this application before it goes public?
I was just gonna ask you, I could talk into another meeting.
Well, if you could send it out to all of us. Our schedule here shows
It's all
August
yours.
1st. And here we are 2 weeks before that, week and a half before that.
We're good.
And, okay, so when, I guess,
So if you wanted to, could we meet the 29th? It would be a very brief meeting. I could say we probably do this in 30 minutes and it would just be good to, or maybe even 15. It'd be good for you to review it one more time. We could send you the information in advance, obviously. And then we just finalize it before we set this out, before it goes live.
so you literally want to add another meeting to your schedule?
I know it sounds really smart, doesn't it?
Just, you're a good city manager. All right, so.
We're the fun group. I'm
Right.
sure that we are the fun group.
You guys want to do the 29th for half an hour?
Sounds great.
All right, 29th it is.
And
Sorry, I was very
noon to
enthusiastic.
12:30 is fine.
I think news should work just fine. It's the last day of the month. That's a pretty big deal of
Is that next
My work.
Friday?
It would be.
week from today. And then we'll just review the changes.
Yep, that's the only thing on the agenda.
Okay.
To finalize the application process.
All right. And then on the 9th, when we review the applications, we'll revisit this subject of setting aside some dollars.
Yeah.
And then the final, I'm gonna add one last little agenda item. If we've made it through.
Nicole, can we have the full screen again? I'm being mindful of Chad, Susanna. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, so I spent some time on the VCB website to see, our representation. And I was hoping I could encourage you to take a look at the VCB website And we can talk about this next week. I just want you to take a look at it and see, you know, I'd like to get your opinion of Lacey's representation on that side.
Okay.
That is it. So then, we have reached the end of our agenda. And if there's nothing else, then I am going to call this meeting adjourned.
Are we gonna wait for more conversation about that?
Yeah, we want to make sure that these guys get a chance to look
Yeah.
at that.
Okay.
Hey, one thing can I add? I know sometimes it would help when we do the contracts, and maybe we add it here, but to almost provide a scope of work that they want to be reimbursed for. Because at some point there's eligible activities, but it would be nice that we have a little bit more specificity sometimes for what the request is gonna be. It's one thing to say, I want $5,000 for this, and
Mhm.
yes, we have general guidelines, what's is eligible. But it would still be nice, like, hey, this is just for operational support, or this is gonna be just for advertising. I don't wanna make it more complicated, but that's something we do need. Sometimes we lack some of that detail when we get to write the contracts.
Okay, so if we ask, you know, show us your expenses, in short, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so as I look at these questions, they ask for funds.
I always just included the funds that I would be asking for, not my whole budget.
You know, the chamber is good at showing us their costs. At least they were on the Beer and Brats and in another event that I think Blake came and briefed on. I don't think it's, you know, out of line to ask. I also know that sometimes funds or cost can't be measured until after. That's a tricky and sticky one, Scott.
Well, we kind of get there with 7, but maybe there's a general, what's your overall budget, and then maybe 7,
What
what's
percent of this is they're asking for is what you're saying?
Yeah, let me look at that, and then when we have an opportunity to kind of go through it on the 29th, we can kind of take a deeper dive into that, if that makes sense.
Show us your budget, show us your invoices, show us what portion are we reimbursing?
Right,
What,
Maybe we just say, what is your total budget? We don't ask that question here.
yeah,
what are we paying for?
right.
That
Are
would
we able,
complement 7.
sorry, are we able to ask how well they did, you know, last year? And, you know, get some information from them and how well they did?
Are you operating at a deficit? Are you operating in the
Yeah,
positive?
how well did we do last year? You know, with the funds that, you know, with your event, how well did you do, you know, with that event last year? Are we able to ask that?
Yeah. Well, that helps you determine the viability of continuing to fund the event.
Mhm.
Okay, we will, so we'll probably do that. If you've received city funds in the past, that would be a good follow-up to that to say, okay,
How did you?
yeah, how was your
Was your
event?
event profitable?
Yep.
Was it a net
Mhm.
Did
neutral?
you meet your, yeah, and we can get some questions like participation, revenue, et cetera,
Mhm.
attendance. Okay,
All right. Again, review next Friday.
Yep.
And take a look. And then if you guys wouldn't mind taking a look at the VCB site and see if you find Lacey stuff that you easily can access and what kind of presence we have there.
Nicole, you getting all this?
It's being recorded. They all know
Yeah.
and they watch this meeting.
I think I
Okay,
get it, but I can always
so-
watch it later.
Then without anything further, I will call this meeting adjourned. Every one of you have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. That was a really good meeting.
Paul, you still recording?